A man runs through a dark forest in Ireland. He seems scared and constantly sees signs that say point of no return in different numbers. However, he fails to escape. It quickly becomes dark around him, and a flock of birds flies overhead. The man falls into some kind of hole, and the next moment an invisible force grabs him and drags him away. Elsewhere in the country lives an artist, Mina, who works in a pet store. One day her boss asks the woman to deliver a rare parrot to the zoo in a nearby city. Mina agrees and takes the bird home with her for the night. There she tells the parrot that her mother died 15 years ago, and suddenly the bird begins to answer. In the evening, Mina puts on a wig and goes to the bar. There she meets a guy and calls herself a fictitious name and invents that she is a ballerina. In the morning, Mina apologizes to the parrot for her behavior. Finally, the couple hits the road. On the way, her sister Lucy calls her. The woman reminds that she and her nephews love her very much and are waiting for her. Mina drives on and eventually finds herself on a road leading into an old dark forest. Suddenly, the car breaks down and stalls. Communication is also completely disconnected. She takes the parrot and goes out onto the road. She fails to find help, and the forest looks dark and empty. Mina returns to the place where she left the car, but there is nothing on the road. Mina continues to wander and talk to the bird. The woman gives the parrot the name Darwin. Suddenly, she notices a woman running past and decides to follow her. Mina catches up with her near a small forest hut. The woman opens the doors and orders her to quickly get inside if she wants to live. Mina runs into the hut. The elderly woman's name is Madeline. She has been living here for some time with two other young people, Sierra and Daniel. She orders Mina to stand in front of the mirror because the keepers cannot go inside but are watching from outside after sunset. Mina stands in front of the mirror and suddenly hears sounds similar to applause. Madeline confirms her suspicions. Keepers applaud the appearance of a new object. In the morning, Mina announces that she intends to leave. The others assure that this is impossible, but still the woman goes into the forest. Madeline catches up with her and says that this forest causes hallucinations, but they can survive here. Signs placed throughout the forest indicate the boundary from which a person can reach the hut before dark. But if you go beyond the border, there is no turning back. A man called a professor made signs, but no one knows where he is now. That night, Daniel puts on a show for the watchers, introducing them to the new girl. For now, she is asked to behave as usual. Kiara turns on the music and dances like she does every night. Mina finds discs with recordings of a TV show about the search for love. The boy finds himself in a cheerful home because his savior turns out to be one of club workers. Then the man went looking for a way out and disappeared. Sierra says that they recently found strange holes that are scattered throughout the forest. This is where the watchers go during daylight hours. She thinks that she has been in the hut for almost 5 months. Later, Madeline announces safety rules. Never leave at night, never open doors for anyone, and always try to be in the light. A strange life begins with completely identical days. Mina watches an endless show and often peers into the mirror. One day she knocks on it, and immediately there is a knock on the door. Madeline orders everyone to freeze. The next day, she and Daniel go hunting, and the guy says that Madeline used to work at the university, so she considers herself the smartest. But she lives here the longest, and Daniel himself has been in the hut for 8 months. Mina convinces Daniel to help her explore the hole. With the help of a rope, Mina lowers herself down, examines the hole, and finds old objects. But then strange sounds are heard from the darkness, similar to those heard at night outside the walls of the hut. Mina screams, and a rope immediately falls to her feet. She comes into the light and leaves the dangerous place. People look at the things they found. They can try to get out of here on a bicycle, but Madeline is very strange about this. Meanwhile, Daniel manages to assemble a surveillance system from the found fragments of electronics and installs a camera behind the door. At night, everything goes as usual. Sarah is dancing when there is a knock on the door. Daniel assumes that a man has come. Madeline forbids them to open, but they hear the voice of Kiara's husband. Only the man's bare legs are visible through the camera, but Madeline convinces everyone that it could be a watcher imitating John. Sierra tries to prove it's John by asking him what book she's reading, but he doesn't answer. The man begs to be saved from death, and Kiara asks to look into the camera. But as he bends down, he is pulled into the forest by something. Suddenly, there is a knock on the mirror as hard as ever before. Madeline stands in front of people, as if blocking everyone, and the knocking stops. In the morning, Madeline throws the bike into a hole and demands not to break the rules. Later, Mina remembers her sister and mother, who invited the girls for a car ride. The weather was beautiful and Mina opened the window. The woman asked to close it because the wind was bothering her, but Mina did not listen. Then Mother got distracted from the road, and a tragedy happened that torments Mina to this day. With the beginning of winter, quarrels begin to break out between the inhabitants of the house, and one day Kiara goes into the forest. Mina catches up with her, and she admits that she felt that John was real. She runs to the house where the screams of Daniel are heard, who is angry with Madeline and Mina and refuses to let them into the house. The women hide under a tree, and after a while they see spider-like monsters appearing from the forest, approaching the window of the hut and making horrible screeching sounds. The watchers look at Daniel and Sierra, while Mina and Madeline wait for them to leave so they can return to the house. When they leave, the women rush to the door and ask to be let inside. Daniel refuses, and then Mina talks about his guilt before her mother and asks him to understand that he will suffer all his life, realizing that he is guilty of the death of people. The door is open. 4 people stand in front of the mirror. Madeline admits that she tried to protect them from certain things. She once taught history and mythology, and unlike them, came here of her own free will. And only here she realized how dangerous this place was. Then she was hunting alone, and one day at sunset she saw an inaccurate copy of herself, but very similar. Watchers are a very ancient species that goes by many names. They study people in order to pretend to be them, but they will never let their captives escape. There are knocks and voices outside the door. Daniel finds a hatch in the floor that they didn't even know existed. People go downstairs and they find a well-fortified room equipped with everything necessary for life, filled with food and equipment. Mina turns on an old computer, and Professor Martin's face appears on the video. He was the first to study the Watchers and try to learn about their origins. In 1979, the scientists found this place, which he called a wonderland. Every evening, caretakers came to his window and studied the man. For many years before this, the professor's colleagues laughed at him and did not believe in his inventions. Then he built this bunker using the labor of men from the surrounding remote villages. He targeted people who were lonely or prone to bad habits, so that their disappearance would not attract much attention. After all, every evening he convinced them to have dinner in the fresh air, and he himself from the bunker watched as the Watchers dealt with them. One day a Watcher appeared in front of him in the form of a girl with red hair. She was very different from the others, as if she was on her own and looked curious and harmless. Then he realized that if he found out her secret, he might even defeat death. He brought this girl into a cage and began experiments in communication, trying to make friends with her. She changed her appearance, sometimes turning into a terrible creature with long arms, but at the same time she listened to the professor. After some time, the professor realized that he had achieved nothing significant. He hid the boat on the riverbank, and this is the only way from here. You just need to follow the birds. He asked the survivor to go to his office at the university and destroy all the documents that are found there. The professor goes to the girl and will remain here forever. In the last recording, people see Martin going upstairs. Shots are fired and everything goes quiet. Shara turns on the music and asks Daniel to dance, but he is upset about the breakup. He says that his family is dysfunctional and he has nowhere to return. Then the girl offers to live with her for a while until they find him a good occupation and place to live, because they have become great friends. In the morning, the group plans to escape. After some time, people come to a huge stone disc in the ground, which closes the entrance to a large tunnel. Madeline says that it was here that the last representatives of the ancient race, who were once very friendly with people, were locked up. After many centuries, they managed to get to the surface, but now friendship has turned into hatred. People walk all day, twilight comes, but neither the river nor the boat are visible. It's starting to rain. People get desperate when they see huge flocks of birds flying in one direction. They run after them and go out to the river. The women rush to the boat. Daniel hears screams behind him and sees John. He returns for the man, but it turns out to be a hallucination. The women beg Daniel to run away, but he does not hear and dies at the hands of the Watcher. Madeline, Mina, and Sierra float down the river. The women wake up in the boat and see that they have returned to civilization. They stop the bus and go into town. Mina later goes to the university where Martin worked and poses as his niece to infiltrate his office and fulfill his last request. There she finds more documents, photographs, and recordings in which he discusses fairies and the fact that half-breeds still live in the world. Mina finds a stack of photographs and looks at them in surprise. In the evening, Mina goes to Kiera's house and shows a photo of Madeline that the professor kept. It turns out that this is his wife, who died several years ago. The Madeline with whom they lived in the hut was a special fairy who could move during the day. It was Martin who caught her. He was unable to kill her, and she took the form of Madeline. A car pulls up to the house and the real Kiera gets out. Realizing that she has been exposed, the fairy stuns the woman and changes her appearance again, turning into Daniel. They just want to live like other species, but due to the hatred of people, they are forced to stay in the dungeons. The fairy turns into Martin and goes to Mina. The fairy turns into her and prepares to kill the woman, but she says that there are others like her somewhere. Mina admits that it was unfair for humans to drive fairies out of their world. The fairy accepts the apology, spreads its wings, and flies away. Mina brings Kiara to her senses. She is later reunited with her twin sister Lucy and finally forgives herself for her mother's death. She tells her about her experience, admitting that she still sees Madeline in other people's images. The nephews come to visit Mina, and at this time a girl with red hair appears outside, looks at the windows of the apartment, and takes on the appearance of a girl with a strange face.